I was saying them, I think one day we're gonna have a startup ecosystem. This is how I used to, and they were laughing at me. Never, it will happen. Then all of a sudden, couple of small startups succeeded. They crossed the chasm, as they call it, right? So they build products. They get like product market fit. So they establish their brand, and guess what? Like the some of the big companies in the US, they noticed them and they came and they acquired them.
Welcome to the Leaders Mindset, where we bring you conversations with leaders who are making an impact in business and our communities. Today, I'm here with Mehmet Gonullu. He's the founder and managing partner of Yassi Ventures and also the host of the CTO Show Podcast. Thanks for being on the show with us today, Mehmet.
Thank you very much, Jason, for inviting me to your show. Like, really, I appreciate it, and I'm very excited to be here today. And I'm hoping, to also contribute to your community and share some of my experience and knowledge.
Well, I have no doubt you will, because you were introduced to us through two previous podcast guests, Linda Nicole and Ian Kellett, who are involved in Ideafy.ai, and they said really, really great things about you. And you and I have talked before, so I think we're going to have a lot to talk about today on the show.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the podcast. Tell us what the CTO Show is all about. Why did you start it, and what kind of stories are you looking to tell?
Oh, I love this question, and it's kind of a little bit long story, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. So, when I was a child, I always liked to be a radio show host, and this is why I was, for the folks old like me who remember the tape recorders, so I was recording my voice, like pretending to be a radio show presenter or something like this, and doing that. So it's something stayed, it seems, in me for years, which I used to like remember. Then when the podcasting as an industry started to evolve, it was something interesting to me. And the thing is, like, it's an evergreen content, as you know, right? So, and it's nice because you can listen to it at any time. It adds a lot of value. You can consume it while you're driving, while you're commuting to work, coming back home, or whatever. So plenty of knowledge in podcast because it's people's story and a lot of knowledge. So always wanted, I said, okay, how can I become a podcast host? And this was like maybe 15 years ago. Of course, work, job, I always said, okay, maybe later, maybe one day. And, starting 2018, 2019, I started to become more serious about it. And I said, okay, I need to start a podcast because I felt like I have a story to tell. I have a lot of knowledge that I can share, something I like to do. Um, COVID hits, and I thought like this is the best time because everyone was at home. People, stuck, and they needed something to consume. But again, I missed that opportunity. But at the end of every year, I have this kind of like journal where I write the things that I accomplished and the things that's still on my bucket list. And end of 2022, the podcast showed number one, right? And I said, okay, I can't, postpone this anymore. I need to do something about it. And this is where I said, look, I don't need to overcomplicate things. What am I good at? What can I tell people? How I can add value? So my background, I worked in technology for all my career. Like I joke with people, fixing cables, formatting computers, and so on. And then, of course, like I become an expert and a consultant. And at the same time, down in my career, I also shifted to the business side of the house. So, sales, marketing, of course, in the technology industry. So one of the things that I thought that no one was talking enough about it, how we can get the business and the technology both together. So we tell business people about technology in a language that they can understand, and vice versa, right? So this was the idea of the podcast. And then when I wanted to put a name, I was looking for a persona, and looking into the org chart of any organization, there's a position called the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer. And if you see any job description for such post, it's the guy who's responsible for the technology, but also he works with the business. So I said, okay, let's call it the CTO show. Some of my friends used to call me also Mr. CTO all the time because, I was coming to them with ideas and, how it can affect business. So I just put the name. We started it at the beginning, just myself, of course, as solo. I started only solo. What I was doing, I was picking a topic. Of course, AI was picking up. ChatGPT came in November 2022, so I started Jan 2023. So talking about all the emerging technologies, but I was trying to tell people the business use cases. um all of it, and I enjoyed it, people enjoyed it, and then someone told me, like, hey, like, we see something in you, like we see you also as someone who can interview other people. I said, okay, how this can be done, I had no clue. But I found a platform. It's called Podmatch. I'm not affiliated, but it's a good platform. um, and I said, okay, let me try to pick few people and see if they would be willing to come to the show. And some people volunteered and they came, and I recorded the first couple of episodes, posted that. People liked it. And I liked, also talking to new people. So yeah, it kicked off. People thought that I'm gonna stop after maybe 10, 20 episodes. And now we are 2025. I have posted more than 500 plus episodes, and this is the story of the podcast.
That is fantastic because I don't think we're anywhere close to 500 on this podcast. I think we might be at about 75. So congratulations on that success and good
Thank you.
job keeping it going. So you talked about CTOs, and they have to have this balance of the business side and the technical side. What else do you find unique about the CTO role in a startup? And what should founders be looking for when they're trying to bring on that CTO or technical co-founder when they're starting out?
Yeah, so of course, like the word CTO, as I was explaining, Chief Technology Officer, and thank you for asking about the startup specifically. Now, in a large organization, probably they have like more people, right, in the company. They have well structure in place, and the CTO really, he or she drives, strategically, the direction of the company from technology perspective. So this is the role of a CTO in a large organization. Now, when it comes to startups, and this is something very important. So we see startups sometimes with solo founders, and the solo founder usually is from technology background. So he assumes, or she assumes, multiple positions at the same time. So they are actually the technologist, they are also the sales guy, they are the marketing guy, and everything. But this can cause sometimes burnout, especially for first time founders, if you don't have like the proper team around you. Now, when it comes to having a technical co-founder, this is a big blessing. If we look to all the successful companies, especially in the US, we find that they started it at least with two co-founders, and one of them was the CTO. Maybe when they start, even the word CTO wasn't there. I can give example from Apple, like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, right? So Steve Wozniak was the geek, was the technologist, and Steve Jobs was more, the face of the company, doing the sales, the marketing. Although, like, Steve Jobs was technical himself. He worked at HP, he worked like at Atari, and he knew the technology. Uh, and I can give plenty of other examples where you have. Now, when you are a founder from non-technical background, you might struggle if you don't have a co-founder with you who understand the technology. Because first of all, things might look very difficult for you. You might hear different opinion. People in technology are usually biased also as well. So this is maybe an advice I would give. Um, like, technologists in general, me included, I don't exclude myself. Sometimes we are biased. So if we like a certain, like, programming language, we will be very biased to it. If we like, for example, certain vendor, we will be very biased to this vendor. And what happens if you don't have, yourself, the technology background, you might hear different opinion and you might find yourself lost. So this is where the CTO comes into the place, because he or she are someone who understand the technology. Probably they are not expert in all of these, but they know what fits what. So they would know, for example, that okay, if we're trying to build, let's say, this kind of application, this is the proper programming language we need, this is the stack that we need, to run our servers and all this. So they will have the hands-on experience, and CTOs, they can learn and adapt with that. So it's very important to have a co-founder with you. The life becomes much easier, because you, as the owner of the idea, you found this idea, you know that it's gonna be a fantastic business opportunity for you. You can't do it alone if you're not technical. So this is where you would need the co-founder. And I always advise people, like, it's better to start the company minimum with two people. I'm not saying you can't start alone, but you need to be technical to start the company alone. So it's very important to have a co-founder with you. The co-founder will be your second half, in a virtual meaning, of course, because you will be focusing on the strategy, where you want to take this company to. Probably you're gonna be focusing on talking to investors, while the CTO will be focusing on running the technical side of the house, making sure like everything is in place, managing the coders or the programmers, managing everything related to the technology. So it's very important to have someone with you that build the company from technology perspective, while you, if you are from non-technical background, build the business, the relationships, maybe probably in the future raising money, so you talk to investors and so on.
Yeah, and you mentioned having a broader view of technology than the current platforms, the current tech stack you're using right now to solve your problems today in a startup. I think that's really important for CTOs to be looking broader and be a little forward looking, because what we do in a startup today for our first 100 users, our first 1,000 users, our first 100,000 users may not be the technology that's going to get us to serving 1 million users or 10 million users or 100 million users, right?
Absolutely. Now, there's no harm, I would say, especially if you're starting maybe with limited budget, right? So you might have to take some decisions where you compromise on few things. But of course, you need to always put into your mind that, as you said, one day we will scale and we would need maybe different platform. So usually what people do, the proper way of doing things, is to start with what we call it the MVP, minimum viable product. The minimum viable product, it's just the bare minimum that you can show to future or prospects, how your product would look like. And then they will have the look and feel. They will start to give you feedback, and then based on it you start to iterate. So this is where it's important to prepare your stack, tech stack. So you have to have this, I would say, mindset. So first, if I can from day one study well, do my homework, and choose the right technology that would fit me, it's good. Of course, but again, if you don't have the resources to adopt that technology, maybe you didn't find people who knows good enough this programming language, or they're not familiar with this tech stack, it's fine. So you might need to do some compromise at the beginning, but down the road, put in mind that at some stage, if you choose at the beginning the wrong technology, not, I would say, not wrong, but non-scalable, let's call it this way, technology, you might need to change. But a good CTO is the one who knows also how to adapt to these changes. And I've seen it, by the way, in large, they are like big companies, but when they start with different tech stack than what they have today. So it's very normal, but this is the decision of the CTO. As you said, he or she, they have to be forward looking and understanding from day one that at any moment, this is very important. I tell people, both business and technology people, um history taught us that, you know things can change. Like even programming languages, they can become obsolete. Tech stacks can become obsolete. So I need to have this mindset that at some stage maybe I need to do everything. So the design you do from day one, you make sure that if you have to migrate to a different platform, to a different tech stack, you build it from day one with this in mind, so you can migrate it easily and you're not locked in, because otherwise you're going to build everything again from scratch.
Yeah, that's one. The only constant in startup life is that everything's going to change and you have to be ready for it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Who are some CTOs you really admire right now, and who is someone you'd love to get as a guest on your show?
Ooh. I'm lucky enough. Let me start with this. I'm lucky enough that I interviewed a lot of brilliant CTOs. Just, on a side note, between parentheses, like on the CTO show, I didn't host only CTOs. Like I hosted also CEOs, CFOs, CMOs, and everything in between, like even consultants. But when it comes to CTOs, yeah, look, I can name plenty of, um, what I like in general without naming anyone. So I like the CTOs that they understand really the business. When they talk, even they can talk technology, but they are very comfortable to talk about the business. When you speak with them, they explain in a very plain English, layman terms, if you want, what they are building, why they are building it, how it works, how it will affect the business. So I admire these kinds of CTOs because they really show this pure merge of both worlds. Now, of course, when it comes also to CTOs, I like the CTOs who publicly share their experience and they give to the community back. So plenty of examples out there. I can't remember specific name now, but like there are plenty of CTOs who have built also personal brands, I would say. They share their learnings, they also give back to the community somehow. So this is, I would say, the persona of the CTOs which I admire currently.
It's fantastic. I mean, you've described so many amazing things that these great CTOs do. What's the biggest takeaway you've had from talking to not just the CTOs, but all of the guests you've had on your podcast?
Oh, um, the stories, I would say, you know, um, every guest I had on the podcast, and maybe I made it kind of a traditional question. I ask people two things at the beginning. Of course, I ask them to introduce themselves, right? What they do, where they were before, their journey. Usually, the next question I ask them why you are what you are today. Like, for example, um, if I have a CTO who is working in fintech, right? I ask them why you choose fintech. Like you could have, I don't know, be in something else, maybe social media or AI or I don't know, right? So I love to hear these stories because what I'm able to do to uncover what these guys are passionate about. I am able to uncover, um, you know, what these guys are trying to solve, what kind of problem they are seeing in the world. And these conversations, when I compiled it together, I found how fascinating, is really the technology as an industry is, because sometimes people look at technology, it's like this magic thing, and people who are like in basements and like they are introverts. By speaking more with people who are like me, because I thought also like, well, I was an introvert, right? So technologists, they are known to be introverts. But what I found, like the people who especially become CTOs and executives, they have different views of the world, because and I think this comes from uh, you know dealing with machines. right? So dealing with machines and dealing with systems, and being under this mindset of, okay, I'm just trying to give instruction and the machine should give me this. So they become pretty better at planning, better at communication, without even knowing it. And I discovered this also because of the podcast. When I spoke to CTOs who look, if you look at them, they look very geeky, and probably you'd say, okay, would this guy like even know how to put two sentences together? And then once I start the discussion and I ask this, I figure out how passionate they are about solving real world problems. And this is why I have this special admire to executive in the technology, because really you find how passionate they are about having the impact, using the technology to make people lives better. And this is what is technology all about, in my opinion. Yeah, of course we have the fancy things, like, yeah, we can do plenty of nice things, but when it comes to something that touches people's lives, for example, if something makes affording something cheaper, or maybe people used to do it in long time and now it's in a shorter time, avoid people doing repetitive tasks, for example, right? So these kinds of CTOs that you know have this mindset always affected me, and this is what I try to uncover on my podcast.
That's fascinating. So, as you mentioned, a lot of people start out just with a passion for tech and a passion for solving problems. CTOs, much like most leaders, most executives, they don't show up fully formed as an executive. How can we all help foster and mentor young people in tech to become the future CTOs in our ecosystems?
Great. So this is one of the missions of the podcast is to get all this combined experience uh, that every guest shares, about his or her career, how to become a good CTO in the future, if they are interested in this path, by the way. Because I know some people, and it's not because they're not good managers or they are not good at managing people, but they enjoy really writing code. So they see themselves, um, having this fulfillment and feeling happy just by doing the things that they do, like what we call them individual contributors, right? Now, when it comes how we can prepare people to be CTOs and good CTOs, in my opinion, we need to go back to basics. And what I mean by going back to basics, so first of all, I always say, what's your purpose? What's your mission? Why you're doing what you're doing? I know, like Simon Sinek is the very famous guy when it comes to know your why. It's the same thing. Why you want to become a CTO in the first place? Like, and okay, if you want to become a CTO, of course, after knowing your why, what's the impact you're gonna leave? How you want people to remember you once you leave that position, and maybe you're gonna go and be a co-founder in a new company, or maybe you're gonna become a CTO for a large enterprise or a large company. So how you want people to remember you? One of the things to prepare CTOs, I would say, it's not about the technology anymore. Of course, it's important, but I think the people skills, uh, and some of these stuff, like you can teach someone, for example, how to have empathy, right? How to build a good culture. So these things, but you can share other people experience how they succeed to do it, and maybe they get inspired by it. Because in my opinion, you can't copy paste things, in real life. Yeah, so we can get a code and copy it, right, and maybe tweak it a little bit to do certain things for us. But when it comes to anything related to humans, like culture, empathy, um, being a good manager, so you're gonna learn this by doing. Of course, you need also, I believe this is very important, um, knowing how to present yourself also as well. And I just told you a couple of minutes ago, like when you asked me about the CTOs that I admire, the ones who also are able to tell their story to everyone. This is where, and I'm very happy, because I started to see this on my own podcast. More and more CTOs, they want to appear on the podcast, of course, to tell their stories because they are building their own personal brands also as well. So we need to teach the new generation that this is very important, because people, they need to know you, and they need to know how you think. This is allows people to understand what kind of leader we're gonna deal with in the future. So plenty of things, we can prepare the new generation to do, but I think we need to focus on the human aspect of doing the CTO job.
I agree. I think it's really important, especially for our technical folks, young technical folks who are really great at coding or AI, whatever it is they're really great at, to say to them, hey, you're really great at that. And we're going to encourage you to do that. And you probably aren't thinking about being a CTO someday, but I'm thinking about it for you. And I know you could do it. So I'm going to be challenging you a little bit along the way to help you get there. And I'm not really giving you a choice in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're based out of Dubai, which must be incredibly exciting as an economy coming to prominence on the world stage right now. What's it like in your tech startup ecosystem there, and what are some of the challenges you're facing?
Yeah, so for the folks who are watching or listening to us, so I'm sure you've heard about, how Dubai is booming, like probably you've seen some documentaries or, from the social media. So it's an exciting place to be currently for multiple reasons. So people who comes here who are like old enough, they say like this remind us, when major hubs in the world were being built, especially because Dubai presenting itself as financial center, they're presenting themselves as a tourism center and as a technology center also as well. So the tech startup, it's in its infancy, I would say, right? um when I'm here since 20 years, right? So back in 2010, 2011, I was always, reading the stories about startups, mainly in the US, in the Silicon Valley, as you can imagine. Um, and, I was telling people, hey, like, why we don't have something like this here? And people were laughing at me. I said, okay, what I'm spotting, the signals I was spotting at that time, is that slowly, slowly, this place with all the development, because they were building fantastic infrastructure, so one of the best infrastructure, roads, you know, network connectivity, working spaces. People didn't get it. What's happening here? So I was telling them, I think one day we're gonna have a startup ecosystem. This is how used to, and they were laughing at me. Never, it will happen. Then all of a sudden, couple of small startups succeeded. They crossed the chasm, as they call it, right? So they build products. They get like product market fit. So they establish their brand, and guess what? Like the some of the big companies in the US, they noticed them and they came and they acquired them. I can give some examples. So there were they didn't start in Dubai, but they started in Jordan, which is another country here in the Middle East. So there was a company called Maktub. So it was the first email system similar to Yahoo, or Gmail here in the region. And they managed, because their differentiation was they didn't come up with a new product. All what they did is that they translated the email interface to Arabic, right? So this was big. So people liked it because it was written in Arabic. And then guess what? Yahoo bought Maktub, right? So they acquired the company. So it was kind of the first successful stories in the tech industry. Then there was another company who started the same business idea as Uber, right? And they call it Kareem. And guess what? Again, they grew, and then at some stage, a couple of years ago, what they did is they get acquired by Uber, right? So they get acquired by Uber. The other thing, other example is, that there was a company called Souk.com, which is very similar to Amazon. So what happened is, um, Souk.com started by a very, you know, I would call him, he's a courageous guy, right? So he was, talking about e-commerce where people even didn't have trust in the internet, right? And everyone's saying this business will fail. Like, he was like, his name, I'll just remember his full name shortly. But anyway, he was so, consistent. He was so strong that he built the brand. And guess what? After a couple of years, Amazon came and they said, we're going to acquire your company. After these three events, what happened? Oh, hold on. We have talent in this part of the world. They can build products, they can scale it, and they can get an exit. So this was, an eye opener. After this, of course, the government also noticed that. They said, hey, like, we have people who started companies here, and they sold that to, companies who were like coming from the US. And all of a sudden we started to have this whole, influx of talent coming here, um, who wanted to build startups. And guess what, now we have like, a very good startup ecosystem. I'm saying it's still small, it's not like as big as Silicon Valley, but we started to have like, some big names. We start to hear, I remember when I was reading, I follow, and I still do it on purpose. I share every single fundraising event that happens in the region, or not only in Dubai, in the whole area, Middle East, North Africa, and emerging markets. So the number was very shyly small, right? So we used to hear about a fundraising event maybe once every 6 months. Now there is no week where we don't have like at least 3 to 4 stories on average, right? From Dubai, and the other countries also as well. So in total, maybe I get like minimum 10 stories every week. But imagine like 10 years ago, this wasn't here. So what I want to say, like, startup ecosystem is growing. Now let's talk about, because you asked me about the challenges. I call these growing pains, right? In startups, maybe if there are like some founders listening or watching us, so we hear about this, like there are growing pains when you start something new. So the ecosystem itself is like a startup now, right? Because it's maturing, it's getting where it wants, but the biggest challenge is funding, right? Finding investors. Talents we have, like we have brilliant, brilliant, brilliant talents. What happened, because Dubai also, it was one of the first cities globally to open up completely after COVID, right? So it was back to business as usual. Of course, we were putting the mask and everything, social distancing, all these things. But business was as usual. Just, by end of 2020, everything was normal. This has attracted a lot of talents. So people who were stuck in some European countries, Southeast Asia was completely closed. Now Latin America. So all these guys, they came to Dubai because Dubai also changed the rules and regulations that allowed people to come and stay here as nomads, as freelancers. So the talent came now, which is the biggest thing. To start companies, you need talent. The second thing is ease of doing business. So starting a company doesn't take time. It used to be a hassle before. So now, one day you have your LLC or whatever, you have your banking account. So it became so easy to do business in Dubai. The only still, I believe, challenge, two things for startups. First, funding, finding someone to support these guys. We have accelerators, we have incubators. In my opinion, they are not enough. Second is to think on a larger scale. What I mean by this, so majority of the folks who start companies here, they think little bit only, you know, how I can take this on the local level, right? I can take on the market, and they get stuck how to scale the business. This is why, and I feel sorry sometimes, every time I see a founder pitch deck, you see that their target is to get acquired by a US company. And I'm telling them, cool, that's fine, but you should have like larger ambitions. So larger ambitions, because you need to go and scale. So this is the, I would say, the other challenge is the know-how of go-to-market strategy. Yes, we can sell here locally, but we need to think how we can take this globally. So this is, in a nutshell, the ecosystem and its challenges.
Well, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of great things in Dubai. There's nothing like a couple of exits to really get the flywheel turning on a startup ecosystem. We may have to have you come out and talk to us here in Las Vegas so we can learn
With
from
pleasure.
your example as we build our ecosystem as well. I want to take a break for a bit. I want to play a game. Are you up for a game?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. The name of this game is Rapid Response. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I want you to respond with the first thing that comes to your mind. So it doesn't need to be a one-word answer. Elaborate as much or as little as you'd like. But we're just going to try to get to know Mehmet a little bit more than some of the other questions might get us there, okay?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, you ready to start?
Yep.
All right. Mehmet Gonullu, rapid response round. Your time begins now. Podcast recommendation.
All in. Jason LeDuc.
Great one. A practice you'd like to see more people embrace.
Meditation.
Also a good one. Has helped me a lot over the last several years. Although I haven't been real consistent with it lately. I need to get back to it. Someone we should all be paying attention to.
Gotta be funny. Elon Musk.
Well, I think everyone already is paying attention to Elon Musk, but yes, I mean, certainly there's a lot for us to learn from him. What is either your get pumped up song or your walk on music?
I'm a little bit classical guy, right? So, if I want to get pumped up, I go to classical music.
Okay. Do you have a favorite?
Any symphony, any kind of symphony.
Okay.
The fast ones, not the slow ones.
Yeah, that's what I would guess is the fast moving, rising crescendo kind of things, right?
Yes.
The biggest influence in your life?
Technology.
That's a good one, and I think I think you're the first person to say that on this show. But I think technology is a really huge influence in all of our lives, and sometimes we don't realize it.
Yeah, it's a fact. I get hooked.
A book everyone should read.
Yeah, it changed somehow the way I think and I look to the world. The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma.
Good one. What is your favorite recreational activity in Dubai?
Going to the beach.
Well, you've got a lot of beach there, so
Yeah, and a lot of sun.
and a lot of sun. Very, very much like Las Vegas. Lots of sun, lots of sand, not enough water to go around. Very ecosystems in their infancy. A lot in common with Dubai and Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Your dream vacation spot?
Not a specific place, I mean geographically, but any tropical island, I would say.
I think that's fair. That's an answer. A lot of
Quiet. I like quiet places for vacation.
That's an answer a lot of people give as well, is that wherever they're going, whatever their place is, they just want it to be quiet. What is a trend you're excited about?
Trend I'm excited about. Um, People willing to start their own businesses.
I love that. Entrepreneurship, it's a great one.
Yeah.
We are gearing up for Global Entrepreneurship Week coming up in a few months here in Vegas, and so we've done it for the last. I think this is the 4th year we're going to be participating in it. We're trying to make it bigger and better every year, so it's exciting. All right, last one. Favorite sports team or player?
I suck at sports usually. I like soccer, you know. I don't have a favorite team or player, but yeah, like I would go for Messi, from Argentina.
Yeah, he's quite an athlete and quite a
Yeah.
quite a
His
quite
story,
a
his story is inspiring. If someone,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for playing our game. It's always nice to learn a little bit more about you than talking about the business or tech questions. I want to get into Yassi Ventures. Why did you found it, and what do you see your role is as the managing partner?
Yeah. So, Yassi Ventures, it's an experiment by itself, right? Because uh, I used to work, in multiple places before. Um, the thing that I found myself doing good, especially in the past, I would say 13, 14 years. So I was completely a technologist, and then all of a sudden I shifted gears a little bit. So I started to work with US based scale ups because they were not startups anymore, who were scaling to this part of the world. But for me, it was like a startup environment because I was like number two, number three in the team, right? So they were just hiring people and starting things. And I was lucky enough to find the companies that, the team that I was part of were able to take the business from literally nothing to the next level, to multi-million dollars businesses. And I repeat this with 3, 4 companies. So by end of 2022, this is the same time when the podcast came, by the way. Um, I was happy at my job, but sometimes you have this thing in your mind that keeps you awake at night, saying what's next, right? So I was asking myself, what's next? So I can go and find. I was like good at searching and spotting, companies. Find a company who's willing to start their regional business here and become, repeat the same success I did before, or there was like this gut feeling that was pushing me that, hey, like, you should go out and explore. I said, okay. I established the company. I didn't know what I was doing, literally. So I said, I will just drop from my job. Of course, I have the safe net, but people, they call it the safe net. And I wanted to explore, but I knew that I would be working with startups because this is what I was doing before, but in a corporate, setup. So I started to explore the market and start to speak to people. Okay, of course, like I did this, I would call it assessment for my skills, assessment of what I like and what I can, do better. And then again and again, the thing that came up to me is, okay, I don't want to be a full time employee with a company, a scale up, but I want to stay in that domain. So how I can do this? So I stumbled upon some articles talking about, because I wanted to see how I can sneak in, if I might say this, to the startup ecosystem in a proper way. And I was reading a lot of books. I was reading, a lot of articles, watching plenty of videos. And the thing that came up is like how you become a startup advisor, right? Or like a mentor. And I knew, knowing that my track record, so people might see me just as a sales guy or maybe a technology consultant because I had these dual roles previously. So I work on my image, as you might have noticed also. Like I did a lot of branding for myself to just put myself that, hey guys, I think I have knowledge I can share, and I want to be an advisor for your company, and but I'm not a full-time employee. So I start to do this. At the same time, I was keen to discover the local ecosystem. I knew about it, but I wanted to talk to local founders, find what's their pain points and so on. So Yassi Ventures was established to be a consultancy or advisory company at the beginning. And I didn't want to be just yet another, let's say, uh, the consultants, quote unquote. I wanted to do it in a different way. It took me some time. It took me almost 1 year to be able to tell the value proposition. My value proposition is I want to be a startup advisor. Put me on your advisory board, right? And what I promise you is if you're a startup coming from outside the region, I will be able to guide you on how to operate in this market, because this market is a little bit complicated market. Things are done differently, culture is different. I've done it before for over a decade, so I can guide you in this, and I can hook you in with the proper ecosystem that allows you to sell your product, service, whatever it is. And it resonated well, and I stayed with the startup because when I started to sit on advisory boards, so we're discussing like any startup. I'm seeing the pivoting. I'm seeing what the CTO is doing, what the CEO is doing. So it's like being part of a startup. For the local ecosystem, I knew I needed to do it differently, and because again it's not mature yet, so I presented myself as a mentor. And by the way, I do this for the sake of just helping them. I don't charge people for mentorship, right? So I sit with founders, some of them like maybe once a month, once every 2 months, right, or a quarter, and just I listen to them what they'll be doing, and I advise them what the next step should be. Now, talking to the local ecosystem, I found a gap, which is now it's something a work in progress. I found a gap that again regarding the funding part is how we can help these startups in getting noticed, how we can help these startups getting funding. So Yassi Ventures, is now, I would say, maturing, and the ultimate goal is to be able to convert it, one of its arms, to become a fund or a syndicate where we can invest in startups. So this is the next phase of Yassi Ventures. I am a solo player here, so it's only me and myself. so but I'm happy about it because I managed also to balance. I learned a lot, of balancing things between everything I do, between the podcast. And honestly, the podcast was kind of a I would say natural marketing engine for me also as well, because first I was able to talk to a lot of startup founders. Second, because what happened, and I'm sure after a while, maybe you are seeing even Jason now, after a while, the more you speak to people, you become the super connector, right? Because, and actually this is how we met, right? So I speak with someone as a guest, and then someone else comes to me, he's presenting his ideas. I say, hey, hold on 1 second, I think one of my guests was talking about this, and I can put you together. Of course, now there's a whole startup that does this, Bordy. But again, it's like the human touch, right? And I did it multiple times. I put people together, and they had really good conversations and good results. Linda and Ian, for example, they they also um, ask me about interviewing one of my guests as at their possible CTOs, right? Funny enough, I was on the interview, and I said, "Yeah, like I interviewed." So I was just listening. Of course, I didn't ask questions or anything. But see these doors that open, it allows you to have this what you call it, fulfillment that you're doing, this giving back that you also trying to give to the society. So this is what is Yassi Ventures. So Yassi Ventures, my ultimate goal, is to have it as a, how I would describe this. So think about it as an entity with multiple, things that it does. So one of them is the funding, one of them is the advisory, one of them is, connecting people. So it's like all the things that I like to do under the umbrella of Yassi Ventures.
Yeah, it's really fun to be able to connect people. It's really fun to be able to take two people and say, you should be talking to each other. You guys are going to
Yes,
do great things
yes,
together. I'm looking forward to the great things we're going to do between the Las Vegas and the Dubai ecosystem. I'm really excited about that.
same here.
So as you're expanding Yassi Ventures, as you're going to bring in this funding part of it, as you build a fund or an angel network or something to do seed stage, early stage investment in companies, what's your best advice for founders who are thinking about starting to pitch investors? Because that's kind of a lifestyle commitment. So
Yeah. So the first thing I tell people, again, maybe I'm repeating some of my ideas, but it applies also when it comes to raising funds. First thing first, um, if you decide to raise fund, know exactly why you're raising this fund. So know what you're gonna do with the money. This is the first thing that you need to answer yourself. um, there are plenty of articles and books that talks about the funding and how you should talk to investors. My advice is keep it simple, right? Keep it very simple, but at the same time, don't go and raise money before you are convinced really that this money you're gonna take to achieve the goals that you want to achieve by having the fund with you. I see like I'm telling you about the mistakes mainly so people can avoid them. So try to avoid, over exaggerating what you're currently building. You know, try to avoid, of course, sharing information which is not accurate. Be spontaneous and be prepared to the investor. Do your research before reaching out. So one of the mistakes also I see as people, they do what we call spray and pray, right? So they send their deck. See, I can understand sometimes. Maybe if I was in their place, I would do the same thing if I feel like kind of quote unquote desperate. But try to avoid it, because if you are really building something meaningful, something really that have high potential, you know it's this balance between self-confidence, but at the same time you're not arrogant, right? So don't lower yourself in front of the investor and showing that you are very desperate, but at the same time be transparent with them. I always admire founders who comes to me and say, hey, like, look, like, this is what we have built so far. We have some traction, but we have issues in this, and this is why we are raising funds, because these funds will allow us to do one, two, three, four, right? So build the roadmap for the investor to see what you're trying to do. The second thing, really, be prepared to answer as much questions as you can. Now I know some investors, they are like, they just have set of questions they ask them every time, but you need to spot this of the investors. So you should understand, because they tell, the investor will take decision in the first like 5 or 6 minutes, probably. It's like the first impression, the way you're talking. But at the same time, you should also judge the investor. um, you should feel like, okay, I can deal with this guy for a long time, because don't forget, investment is not one transaction and you're done. When you take an investor, he's on your cap table, so he might or she might take also a seat on your board, right? You need to test each other's. The best way is that you need to prepare as a founder. This is also what I have noticed myself, being on this both sides of the table, kind of, is some investors would take time, not because they are slow, because they want to see if you're really passionate about what you're doing. They want to see your not testing. They want to notice how you're progressing, right? They want to see, like, are you giving up, or are you persistent? You have this perseverance, you're continuing. So all these things, and of course, like the traditional thing that you would hear from people: do your study, see if they invest in whatever you're building. So for example, if you're building fintech, don't go to someone who focus on, I don't know, climate tech, right? So there will be no match. Of course, like, you need also to understand the check sizes. Now if you go to a VC, probably this information will be available, but if you're trying to raise from angel investors and maybe high net worth individuals, you need to understand. And cold pitching doesn't always work, especially with these people. Maybe VCs, yes, because VCs, they have their emails, they expect deals to come to them by cold outreach. But when you go to angel investors, when you go to high net worth individuals, maybe family offices, if they invest directly in startups, you need to build the relationship first. So you can, and this is why I tell people it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, because don't expect to start the raising today and close in 6 months. It might take you 1 year. It depends of what you're building. This is why build your network before you start to raise money. This is, I think, it's still underrated when it comes to fundraising.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're talking about that founders should also be evaluating the investors and building those relationships with them. I think that's so important. One of the things we talk about with founders here in our ecosystem is asking them to think about what they want from investors, what investors can provide them besides just the capital. What do you think is important for investors to provide early stage companies?
So first, they need to understand what these founders are building, right? So they need to see the potential. I always tell people, look, an investor, probably they have the money to invest in multiple things at the same time, right? Um, so you need to show them the opportunity. So they need to see what is the potential, the return of investment. So if I give you today, let's say $100,000, down the road, 5 years from now, this $100,000, how much worth it gonna be, right? So they would, so of course, like investors, they're not charity, right? So they need to make sure that, of course, they understand the risk. A professional, as you call it in the US, an accredited investor is someone that understands that any asset class has risk in it. But at the same time, these guys, they might have on their table plenty of options. So how they would pick you? First of all, you need to show what the return of investment would be, why it's a big opportunity, why now is the best time to invest in them, why what they're building would be able to be, become a unicorn maybe in the future. The second thing, what investors look at is you as person and as a team. Do you have this coherence in the team? Do you have the enough experience to take this company to the next level? Now, I gotta tell you a fact, by the way. I'm not saying this to depress people, but expect, if you are a first time founder, your job is much hard, because you need to prove yourself also. How you do this? You try to surround yourself with advisors. You try to surround yourself with names which might somehow be a factor to give trust in investors to give you their money. So maybe you have a CTO who have track record building other like great companies. Maybe you have an advisor like who's a very well known figure, who used to sit on boards of like very big companies, very well known companies. So the team, your vision, and the return of investment are the three things, in my opinion, as investors they should look at. And of course, the technology itself. Listen, like, I gotta tell people this: if you talk to an investor, they don't care if you're using, OpenAI API, or are using Google API, are you hosting it on Amazon or Azure. They don't care about this. They want to see why the opportunity is big enough for them, and they should not miss it.
Absolutely right. Uh, Real investors at any stage, whether you're talking angel, pre-seed, seed, all the way up through Series A and into the big VC kind of rounds, they don't care how you do it. They care that you do it and you know how you're going to do it. Exactly. And they care, will it make them money? All investors are different, but they all have those two things in common.
Yeah. And like today I had in my early morning. So I was telling people, look, when also you are prepared. So for example, one of the things we see, which really you need to be sure about it, is your market size, right? And how much this market is growing over the years. Because I just gave someone today a very simple example. I asked this question. On average, a real estate investment, how much is the return of investment of every year? Let's say like 6%, 7%, because in Dubai it's like high yield, right? So I said, if you come with something that its return is like less than this, people would say, hey, listen, like real estate is like, like it's more safe than yours because real estate is a proven asset class and it's returning 6%. So why I should give you your money and I don't have any guarantee, right? So you need to make sure that the market you are in is big enough and it's growing fast. And I think today AI and quantum computing and like edge computing, we have plenty of things, plenty of opportunities around the world in markets that are like big enough and they're gonna keep growing in the future.
Great advice. Great advice for all our investors, our founders, our funders out there. What's coming up for you for the rest of 2025?
What's coming? So I have a book which is it launched on 10th of September. So I have this book now up. What else? Yeah, so I'm gonna probably have more, I would say, visits to grow this bridge, of the ecosystem that you just talked about. So I have planned, visits to multiple, I would say, startup ecosystem hubs. Hopefully, I would be able to do something in the US by the end of the year. One of the companies, like I'm currently advising. So probably like also I have to visit them. They are based in the Bay Area. But yeah, I want to strengthen this bridge opportunity because in my opinion, the next phase of growth for startups are the startups who are able to do this bridge early rather than wait and then do it, because you need to do things in parallel. It's a very fast changing world and we need to try to get early on so we don't miss the train after that.
Excellent. Well, it's a quick flight from the Bay Area down to Vegas. So if you're going to be in the States,
I've done it before. Yeah, with pleasure. Yeah. So when I used to work with the big companies who are based in the US, I used to do our sales kickoffs in Vegas. So I used to take either San Francisco airport or Seattle, which is, I think, like 1.5 hours to Vegas. So yeah, happily I would do it and I would be there.
Can't wait. All right. So for everyone watching or listening right now, what's the one thing young people can do today to set themselves up for success in a career in tech so they can eventually become that CTO?
Simple. I would make it very simple. Keep learning. Never stop learning. That's it. Keep learning.
That's fantastic. I love it. Great advice. Such a great talk today. I want to thank you for joining us, Mehmet. Where can everyone find you so they can thank you for joining us today as well?
Yeah, happy if someone want to connect. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Of course, you can put the link later on. Also, if you are interested in my listening to my podcast, it's available on all the podcasting platforms. The website is mehmetcto.show. And yeah, happy to connect with everyone. If you want to have a chat, would be more than happy to do that.
And we'll get all that linked up in the episode description and the notes and all the good social media and that kind of stuff so everyone can find you easily. I always think about people in their cars right now driving and they're looking for something to write this down on or trying to take a note on their phone as they're listening. Don't worry about it. we're going to give you all the links. So I want to thank all of you for watching and listening. If you found this conversation valuable, go ahead and share it with someone who can use it. Leave us a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're on a podcast platform, give us a 5-star review. Also, I guess there's this new thing on YouTube called a hype button or something like that. So if you really like this, go hit that thing and see if you can hype up the podcast a little bit so we can get out to a bigger audience and get these great interviews with folks like Mehmet out to more people. So we have a lot more amazing interviews coming your way. So go out there, do great things today. Onward and upward.